So, JB, can you lead the prayer? Okay, good morning everyone. Okay, take your seat. So, I will check the attendance first. So, all of you is present today. Okay, that's good. So, before we start our topic, who can recap our topic yesterday? Okay, Rio? Okay, good. Okay, thank you, Rio. Is it done? So, I will divide you into two groups. Uh, count off. So, go to your respective group. So, we will have a role play for today's video. So, yung role play nyo ay tungkol sa ethical decision making or goodwill. So, I will give you 2 minutes to practice. Okay, good. So, perform. Okay, clap your hands everybody. So, I prepare a game here entitled Would You Know? So, I will pick 3 person to give their insight about the activity. So, okay? So, good job. So, we will go to our topic. So, our topic for today is all about deontology. Deontology is an ethical theory that uses rules to distinguish right from wrong. Deontology is often associated with philosopher Immanuel Kant. Uh, he believed that ethical actions follow universal moral laws such as don't lie, don't steal, and don't cheat. This kind of theory is something called deontological, from the Greek word dien or dian, meaning to be obligated. So, or simply duty. So, in this kind of theory or philosophy, an act of conduct is considered good or right. So, thus justified morally not by showing that has good and beneficial consequences or effects, but by virtue of its being an action that emanates from a sense of duty of moral obligation. Due to its central emphasis on the significance, the value of duty or obligation as the main motivation or intention in human actions, this theory, well known as deontological theory or deontological ethics. So, is simply duty ethics recognizes only those actions that are done out of pure duty. Huh? So, everything else does not give an act any moral value or ethical significance. So, we have Kant's major contribution to deontological theory. So, if one tries to scan the entire history of philosophy, perhaps one cannot find a more avid defender of deontological theory in modern times than the great German philosopher. This is Immanuel Kant. He is a philosopher whose remarkable contribution to the history of philosophy. So, he is the greatest of all time in his time, no? So, for some, Kant is recognized as the most important philosopher who are ever lived. The entire of his philosophic corpus. So, in the words of an author, is brilliant, profound, rich, complex, and fascinating. So, it is said with fairness that no other thinker has contributed as many important and brilliant ideals to the philosophical study of ethics as Kant. So, we will proceed to the goodwill, the core of Kant's ethics. Kant claims that what makes an act right, good, and wrong or bad does not depend on its result or consequences, since all these are simply beyond one's control. No? So, hence a matter of luck or accident. So, things usually turn out the way they are, not the way we want and expect them to be. So, thus the consequences of action are entirely out of our hands. No? So, hence, for him, morality as the sole and exclusive domain of rational beings should be something of which one should have total control. So, if one is indeed fully accountable of his action and conduct, then chance or luck should be taken out of the equation. So, this, he believes, can only be achieved by appealing to some universal, rational, ethical principle. So, an ethical principle that is in the form of a maxim that guides human action at all times and in all situations. So, at the very outset of his brilliant philosophical work, grounding for the Metaphysics of Morals, published in 1785, Kant writes, "Nothing can be called good without qualification except goodwill." So, having a goodwill, or rather acting in goodwill, means doing an act with the right intention or motives in accordance with the right maxims or principles. So, doing one's duty or obligation for its own sake rather than for personal gain or self-interest, this goes against the ethics of utilitarianism. So, if one's motive in doing an act is good and noble, regardless of its consequence or result, even if they are not beneficial to you, then it's good, and thus your conduct is morally praiseworthy. You ought to be congratulated for doing the right thing as far as the ethics of Kant is concerned. That's all that matters. No? So, the good here is the one that you ought to do. So, you simply have to do the good because it's good. It's good because it's moral duty for everyone to do good. So, Kant's ethics is an ethics that is primarily based on goodwill. The goodwill is good if it does its duty out of pure reverence to the moral law. So, that's all. Thank you.
Good day everyone, I am Hannah and today I will continue with the topic deontology. Since alam niyo na kung ano yung deontology, it simply means duty. And the great contributor for this is Immanuel Kant. Now let's proceed to duty over inclination. Kant believes that a person is only acting morally only when he suppresses his or her feelings and inclinations and does that which he or she is obliged to do. According to Kant, moral actions are not determined by personal desires or inclinations, but rather by the individual sense of duty or obligation. Duty for Kant is the guiding principle that should inform our moral decision making. So, naniniwala si Kant na ang tunay na halaga ng moral ay nakasalalay sa pagkilos na mayroong sense ng duty or obligation rather than acting out of inclination or personal gain. So, inclinations are subjective and can vary from person to person, but duty is subjective and universal. Kant argues that moral principles should be based on rationality and apply to all human beings. So for example, pagtulong sa iba. So Kant believed that helping others is a moral duty that should be performed irrespective of personal inclinations. So halimbawa, ng pagadto ka sa important mong appointment. And then, may nakasalubong ka nga tao nga gapangailangan sang bulik. So, sa point ni Kant, kailangan mong siya buligan, miskan makaabala pa siya sa imo, miskan makakontradict pa siya sa personal desires mo. Second example is telling the truth. According to Kant, one should always tell the truth regardless of the potential consequences or personal inclinations. Halimbawa, nang ara ka sa sitwasyon nga, kailangan mo magtinikal, kay para ma-save mo ang sarili mo ba na. Tapos, according kay Kant, it is your duty to tell the truth regardless of your personal inclinations to avoid the negative outcomes. Kant's philosophy of duty over inclinations emphasizes that moral actions should be driven by a sense of duty and adherence to universal moral principles. So, to be a good person in Kant's view is to act from a sense of duty. So, dapat dinhi mo mga isa ka bagay kay duty mo to siya, amo to siya ang tama. Hindi siya personal mo lang personal interest mo lang. So, one should not be motivated by any other reasons except what emanates from this sense of moral obligation. Next is duty is superior to happiness. If being a good person according to Kant requires us to do what is right out from the sense of duty or moral obligations, our duties cannot consist simply in the following rules that promote pleasures and the avoidance of pain as the utilitarian way, since that would make right actions depend upon consequences on how will we satisfy our needs. So, ang pagiging mabuting tao daw, according kay Kant, is ang paggawa kung anong tama from your sense of duty. Our duties or action is hindi lang siya always based sa pleasure, sa happiness, or sa pain, patas ang utilitarianism. Dapat hindi siya always base sa consequences or sa desires. Dapat kung ano ang imong duty, amo ito ang imong himuon. And if the consequences of our actions are the ones that give them moral worth, then morality becomes contingent to something outside itself. In that case, morality would become not an end in itself, but just a means to an end that would leave us without a stable and firm foundation. So for Kant, we said that the rightness or wrongness of an act is not determined by its outcomes or results, but by its intrinsic property. Kant argues that basing morality on happiness can lead to a subjective and unreliable foundation for ethics. It is because happiness can vary from person to person and can change according to the circumstances. So, if moral actions were determined by happiness, then the ethical standards would be subjective and dependent on personal preferences. Kant believed that the true morality should be based on objective principles that are universally applicable. Halimbawa, nakakita ka nga damo sang kwarta. Tapos, may choice ka nga pwede mo tago ng kwarta or magamit mo siya para makakuha mo ang goals mo or mga gusto mo ba kulong. Pwede mo magamit ng kwarta para baka lang gusto mo ka mga makapalipay sa imo. Pero according kay Kant, ang tunay na moral act dito is ibalik mo ang pitaka sa tag-iya, ibalik mo ang kwarta sa tag-iya, miskin hindi siya makapalipay sa imo. Ang paghimos ng duty, it means you are recognizing the moral obligation to respect the property or rights of others. Miskan ano pa nga happiness ang pwede nga ibalik sa to sa imo. So true morality lies in acting out of the sense of duty, guided by the rational principles that apply universally to all. This one is the categorical imperative or the universalizability principle. According to Kant, anytime we do a certain act voluntarily, we operate under some kind of maxim, rule, or directive. So, ang tao daw, may ito tasang categorical imperative. May tasang procedure or guide sa pag-act. Sang tama, kag sang mali. Among gandang ginahambal nila nga uy, dako naman na siya, bala niya na ng tama kag ang mali. So, naman nga situation, ginatawag ni siya ni Kant nga maxim. A maxim is one which is the guiding reason or principle for acting under a particular situation as free and rational beings. We act on the basis of self-generated rules or laws or conduct, and this primarily makes us unique moral beings. So, a maxim is a personal and subjective guiding principle on which we act or behave as contrary to an objective and external principle or rule upon which we should act. So, may ara ta kanya-kanya nga maxim. Halimbawa ako, may ara ako sang rule sa sarili ko. Kung ano ang tama kag ang mali. Tapos ikaw, may ara ka man sang rule sa sarili mo sang tama kag mali. And may mga situation or halimbawa, may mga bagay na tama siya sa imo, pero mali siya para sa akon. So, it is because we have the different maxim and this primarily makes us unique moral beings. The notion of the categorical imperative, many believe, is where Kant made his greatest and lasting contribution to ethical thought. He introduces the concept of universalization, which holds that we must universalize our moral judgment. It states that we must apply the judgment we make to everyone without exception. So, ang universalizability principle, bago ka mag-act, isipon mo na kung katanggap-tanggap siya, kung ang tanan is same man mag-act. So, to apply the universalizability principle, we need to formulate a maxim, which is a principle or rule describes the intention behind the action. Then, the maxim is tested to see if it can be applied as a universal law. Halimbawa, may isa ka tao nga ara sa sitwasyon nga kung magtinigil siya, makatakas siya sa gulo. And the maxim there could be stated as, I will lie whenever it benefits me. And kung ang magdigal or lying is may universal law, makaguba siya sa trust kag communication. Therefore, according to universalizability principle, lying cannot be morally justified because it can lead to a contradiction when universalized. That's all our lesson for today. I hope you learned something. And may I request everyone to get 1/2 crosswise and answer the following questions. Okay, thank you. And for your assignment, so that's all for today. Goodbye, everyone.